Nicola Sturgeon faces budget backlash as dole queue gets ever longer. Finance Secretary Derek Mackay is expected to provide woe for thousands of workers when he unveils his financial program. Middle and high earners are widely thought to face tax hikes, and a move business leaders fear will damage the country's fragile economy. As well as increasing the top rate, he is considering increasing the basic and higher rates and introducing a new band between the two. This could see those earning as little as £24,000 paying more income tax. Today's gloomy jobs figures prompted Tory calls for the SNP to use Holyrood's new powers to boost growth. Ms Sturgeon was also accused of disowning her own manifesto pledging last year's Scottish election not to increase the basic rate of income tax. Ministers have already frozen the threshold for paying the 40p higher tax rate at £43,000, making Scotland the highest taxed part of the UK as it rose to £45,000 south of the border. Scottish Secretary David Mundell described the rise in unemployment as disappointing and urged Mr Mackay to tackle Scotland's economic challenges. He said, "We have delivered on our commitment to make the Scottish Parliament more powerful and more accountable to people in Scotland. The budget is an opportunity for the Scottish Government to set out how it will use its new powers to drive economic growth. It is for Holyrood to decide how to use its new income tax powers. But I have been clear that making Scotland the highest taxed part of the UK would harm our economy, be bad for business and put jobs at risk." It came as the Office for National Statistics, ONS, said the number of Scots out of work increased despite a UK-wide fall. In the 3 months to October, the jobless total rose by 8,000 and now stands at 114,000. The unemployment rate increased by 0.3% to 4.1%, which was marginally below the UK rate of 4.3%. The number of Scots in work also dropped by 21,000 over the same period. The total number of people unemployed in the UK now stands at almost 1.43 million after a fall of 26,000. With inflation hitting 3%, wages are failing to keep up. In real terms, wages dropped by 0.2%, putting further strain on households. Employability Minister Jamie Hepburn said the rise in unemployment was disappointing but stressed that the rate in Scotland was lower than that for the UK as a whole. The Fraser-Valander Institute think tank said the figures were an unwelcome backdrop to the budget and called for concrete actions to support growth. The Federation of Small Businesses described the labour statistics as unsettling. Scottish policy convener Andy Wilkes reiterated the majority of firms oppose tax hikes, adding, "But that doesn't mean there isn't action which ministers could take to kickstart growth and help firms create jobs." Addressing long-term problems with local roads and pushing forward with plans to deliver universal broadband would be good places to start. Meanwhile, retailers issued a last-ditch plea to the SNP to follow England and Wales with a switch in how business rates are calculated from the Retail Price Index, RPI, rate of inflation to the lower Consumer Price Index, CPI. Scottish Retail Consortium Director David Lonsdale said, "Retailers are grappling with profound changes in shopping habits, squeezed consumers and relentless rises in costs." Speaking at the National Economic Forum in Edinburgh on the eve of the budget, Ms Sturgeon insisted the plans will strike the right balance for firms and hinted at extra cash for key areas like infrastructure and research and development. But she admitted that some of the plans were likely to be controversial. "Nobody will agree with everything in the budget, that's not how budgets, particularly tough budgets, work. But I do hope you will be able to see that the interests of businesses and the interests of growing the economy have been absolutely central at every stage in our thinking." Tories later clashed with Mr Mackay during a fiery debate and vote at Holyrood, urging the SNP to stick to its 2016 manifesto promise to implement a freeze to help low and middle-income earners. Conservative finance spokesman Murdoch Fraser insisted ministers had absolutely no mandate to hike taxes, highlighting that 65% of Scots voted for parties opposing any increase in the basic rate last year. He pointed to the 53 times senior SNP figures, including First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, Deputy First Minister John Swinney and Mr Mackay, had said the basic rate of income tax should not go up. But Mr. Mackay said he would take no lessons from the Conservatives because of continued austerity, calling them the biggest threat to the economy in Scotland. Labour leader Richard Leonard also criticised Conservatives, saying it was a bit rich for them to portray themselves as guardians of the working people. Green co-convener Patrick Harive, whose party is widely seen as the most likely to strike a budget deal, said the plans would not pass if all were to dig in their heels to manifesto positions. The Tory motion fell as left-wing MSPs backed the government by a margin of 64 to 56. Speaking after the vote, Mr. Fraser said, "The Nationalists were offered the chance to back, word for word, the promise they made to the Scottish people in 2016. Instead, they have disowned that pledge, and signalled their intention to punish hard workers."